Cyrus was commander of the king's royal guard in Ecbatana, and while his father was the king's governor in Persia, he had been living in the capital for most of his life as a kind of royal captive. At this time, the Persians were poor and unimportant people in the grand scheme of things. They were the subjects of a people called the Medes and their king Astyages. The Medes and their empire were the terror of the world. In Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar had built the massive Median Wall in fear of their armies, and around the time of the Battle of Marathon, the name of the Medes still terrified the Greeks. Many years ago, Cyrus's own grandfather, Cyrus I, had also been forced to give his son to the Assyrian king Assurbanipal as a form of tribute. Relocating people was an extremely common tactic in the ancient world. It detached people from loyalty to their homeland and made them less likely to rebel. But this didn't work on Cyrus. For a while now, he had been alarmed by the cruelty that the Persians were experiencing from the Medes, and he had been preparing to revolt, only he had been waiting for the right opportunity to return home. Seeing that the time was right, his first act would be to formally request that the king give him command authority in Persia. See, Cyrus's plan, once he got back to Persia, was that he would assemble the Persians in one place and then convince them to revolt. But at this time, he was only a prince, and it was Cyrus's father who was the king's governor in Persia. Cyrus had no formal power to marshal the Persian troops. He wouldn't be able to do anything unless he got this permission. Cyrus approached the king, and after performing all the ceremonial rites, he formally requested that the king give him command authority by making him the general in Persia, replacing his father. We are told he did this on the pretext that his father Cambyses was old and in poor health, and that Cyrus wanted to make a sacrifice on the king's behalf. But Astyages said no. He had said no because he felt close to Cyrus, who was his grandson, and would miss him if he left. Astyages had no idea what was being planned against him. This put Cyrus in a dark mood. Despite this, he decided to try again, but to do so under new circumstances. On one day, when Astyages was drunk and in a good mood, Cyrus gave the signal to a eunuch, who approached the king with the following words: "Cyrus, your slave, begs that you grant him permission to make the sacrifice which he wished for you on your behalf, and to tend to his ailing father." Astyages ordered Cyrus to come over. Apparently, the wine had given him amnesia because the king granted Cyrus his request, and with a smile. According to Dinon, Cyrus was promoted from commander of the royal guards to commander of the army in Persia. Cyrus made the preparations, and before morning came, he set out. Astyages had just inadvertently let his most dangerous enemy go. Later, while the king was sitting at a banquet with his friends, performers played different songs until one of the most famous singers at that time, named Angares, sang the following for the king: "A mighty monster is let loose at last into the marsh, fiercer than the wildest boar, and when it becomes master of the neighboring ground, it will soon fight with ease against numerous hosts." This was a bit of a strange song, and when Astyages asked him what monster he meant, he said Cyrus the Persian. A second story says that it was Astyages' concubines, who were singers and kithara players, that sang him a song which went like this: "The lion had a boar in its grasp, but released it into the marsh, where he became more powerful, and in a fierce battle, the weaker subdued the stronger." So Astyages was being warned about what was about to happen. Meanwhile, we're told Cyrus had had a dream instructing him to make the first man that he met on his trip to Persia as his companion in second-in-command. As he traveled, he passed by the slave house of a rich Median noble and saw a man being whipped by his master while carrying dung in a basket. Cyrus asked him his name, and the man said his name was Ouroboros. We know that Ouroboros was Elamite and meant broad-shouldered, so Ouroboros was likely a slave name that had been given to him by his masters. Asking Ouroboros where he came from, the slave told him that he was from Persia. We can imagine how Cyrus felt when he found out that the man who was being mistreated like this was a Persian. One of Cyrus's main reasons for wanting to rebel in the first place was that the Medes were abusing and enslaving the Persians. He immediately freed the man and removed his chains, and took him with him back to Persia to be a general and his second in command. This Oabaris is the same general that Cyrus would send to capture Babylon 20 years later. When Cyrus finally arrived in Persia, he called an assembly and read out a letter telling the Persians that Astyages had just made him their general, and so they should obey him. Then he began his plan. He led the Persians to a large field covered in thorns and ordered them to spend the entire day cleaning it out. After tirelessly doing this, on the next day, Cyrus got all his father's herds of cows, sheep, and goats, and also plenty of good bread and wine for a huge feast. On this day, he ordered the Persians to chill and party and enjoy the massive feast that he'd made for them. After the feast was over, he assembled them again and asked them, "Which day did you like better, today or yesterday?" Obviously, they liked the second day of food and drinks and partying. But Cyrus told them that the enjoyment that they had had on the second day was not possible without the hard work that they did from clearing the thorns on the first. In the same way, freedom is hard work, but it will pay off. He told them if they continued to be servants of Astyages, then they could expect many more hard days like the first. But if they worked for their freedom, they could enjoy plenty of days of enjoyment like the second. So revolt from Astyages without a moment's delay. The Persians had hated the rule of the Medes for a long time now, and the point Cyrus made was moving. Being delighted to finally find a leader, they joined Cyrus and revolted. The Persians were now independent and made Cyrus their king. The Persian kingdom began in the year 559 BC. When Astyages found out about this, he sent messengers to Persia, telling Cyrus to come back immediately. But Cyrus replied, "Tell Astyages that I will appear in his presence sooner than he will like." When Astyages received Cyrus's answer, he immediately prepared for war,